Okay. Well, I'm William Peters, publisher of Inner Child Press, amongst a few other things that I've done in my lifetime. But I'm here today. I'm honored to be here on Winds of Change Press, radio, to interview my friend, from many years, um, June Barefield, aka June Bugg, and welcome, June. It's finally we're at a crossroad where we're getting this done after many tries. And Valentine, again, I want to thank you for providing the platform for us to have this done, to be able to get this done. Um, in doing June's last book, and I'll show you what the book is. Okay, Stay Human. I must say, June is difficult. Okay, what it is. He's difficult. You can probably attest to this. But it's those particular challenges of who he is as a writer, as a human being, that hones our stones, so to speak. Sharpens our edges to be more profound and more concise and more insightful. In working with him, and I'm proud to say that this is the fourth published book, that we have done, Stay Human. And there's a few other books that we have done, dating back many years. With the first book being, what was the first book, June?
The Journeyman.
Yeah, the Journeyman. No, before the dawn.
Okay, Journeyman came before that, though. You did that too. Journeyman.
No, before the dawn was the first one. That's the one that Luna did the cover for.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Then we did the Journeyman, and then we did Bang, and this is the fourth book. And of course, with the books, we have many other books that have been started and projects that we put aside or what have you. So. June's a prolific writer, and the reason I'm doing all this talking is because, going back to this latest book, Stay Human, when we asked June for a biography, he tells me, "Oh, I don't like doing them." Yeah, so we didn't get a biography in the book. So I'm going to speak a little bit about who June Barefield is from my limited perspective. Going back many years ago when we were doing radio, there was this common friend of ours, Janice Johnson, aka Heartspoken Nisi. And June was not one that was, that graced the radio as much as so many other poets. But one day, Nisi, who I was very good friends with, still am, asked me, "Well, do you know June Barefield? June Bugg?" I'm like, "No, I don't know him. I never heard of him before." She says, "Well, you need to meet him." So she hooked us up. And, I want to say a poetic love affair, was established because of the consciousness that this young man, and I can call him, qualified to call him young man, that this young man, epitomizes. And also the style of writing, eclectic as it may be, is very profound in its own presence. And unlike, a lot of the writers that we've seen, and who you probably can attest to this, quite different, with the colloquialisms and various other styles of writing. From there, in meeting him, communicating, and this is prior to any books, we met for the first time, in Virginia at a open spoken word venue with Siddhartha Beth Pierce, in was we at Richmond, Virginia?
Richmond, yeah.
Richmond, Virginia. And from there, our personal relationship continued to develop. Sometimes volatile, sometimes compliant, but by the same
yes, sir.
But by the same token, there was a underwritten understanding that we were both striving to achieve the same thing. We were just pleased with the consciousness of the world while striving to communicate that and also to bring more people along to a consciousness of realizing that, there's something askew with this picture that we're living, and perhaps we need to consider it and change it. So, I commend June for that particular stance that he takes. And I commend, all poets, writers, artists, who are, if you would, counterculture to the norm, the accepted norms that put us to sleep. So when I talk about June, this is definitely a gentleman that's not asleep, well read, well experienced. And so it's a pleasure. It's really, really, truly a pleasure for me to welcome here to this platform today. June, I thank you for taking the time to be here. And like I said, it took a long time coming, but here we are. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure. Finally here. If everybody can hear me, okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. On the biography thing, I believe I'm working up to it, right? I think that my problems with biographies they don't belong to anybody else. They mostly belong to me, right? Because when I first met you, I just got out the penitentiary,
Okay.
So, and I was kicked out of the armed forces. So there was a lot of shame, and there was a lot of guilt and blame that I was placing on myself at the time.
Okay.
So to do a biography would mean that I would have to tell everybody that basically I ain't shit, right? So that was then and is now. Although in the last 10 years, I think if anybody's ever seen that movie, The Legend of the Fall, when the Indian man says that the bear inside of him is getting quiet, and he's talking about Tristan, one of the main characters in the movie.
Right.
I think I'm in that phase of my life where silence dominates, and it's a beautiful thing. So I am working towards making a lifetime of what you call it, defiance. I can put it in words and make it eloquent. So I thank you, and I've learned a lot on this trip. I don't think that I've written a book per se as of yet. I've written down some feelings and emotions, the journeyman and before the dawn and bang. I've written things down, but I don't think that I put a cohesive piece of work together. And this time around, working with Dr. Gilmez and yourself, as always, I've learned a lot about structure, silence. I've learned a lot just about the process and the importance of it. So again, thank you.
Right. It's funny that you talk about structure, and I got to call you out on this. I know when I first got your manuscript, the first thing I'm doing, I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna format it to get it easier for Julia to do the editing. So I'm looking at some of the titles, and I'm capitalizing this and lowercasing this and taking this out and putting that in, and then I realize, oh my God, let me stop and consider. I'm dealing with June here. He's not like any other writer, because like there's a lot of means of which you express yourself. And I got to say, I have a couple myself, where I lowercase my eyes and things of that nature. But you got me beat by far. So once I realized it, and I sent you the copy, he says, man, no one told you to change those titles like that. So I changed it back, gave it to Julia, and let her have the headaches.
Exactly.
And she's so graceful going back and forth, that it takes to try to kind of, if I would, speaking for her, to try to understand your artistic expression, your means of how you artistically express yourself, and the whys. What I see personally is a combination of the art form meeting the street for whatever. And, that's kind of hard to capture sometimes for the average writer because they have no idea. Like we might say something like instead of the word them, say M. I saw him, whatever. But you have taken it to another level. And I think Julia is probably more, qualified to speak on this because she ultimately had to deal with the back and the forth and the editing or whatever. Julia, is there anything you want to say along those lines about that?
Okay. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Hi again, everybody. What Bill mentioned as far as structure, Bill, darling, you need to mute yours.
I did mute.
Oh, you did? Okay. Okay. When you mentioned structure about June's, writing, you have known, Bill has known June, of course, much longer through the other, the previous 3 books and then this one, but I don't want to take too much time because I much rather hear June. But this is what I'm going to say, and it is an admission. I have spent too much, maybe too much is much, but most of my life, professional life in academia. And I was preconditioned, almost like every faculty colleague I have known. This is how you write. This is how how it's supposed to be structured. I'm not talking about rhyme or anything, but with June, with you, it was a most welcome learning curve for me because I took your voice in, first of all, to my heart. And before I would jump into, oh, this is how we are supposed to write it, what Bill said, capitalize this, capitalize that, I knew that that's not what you wanted, or that's not how you voiced your art. So learning curve is an understatement. It was a most appreciated experience for me to go through this journey with you, as far as my modest, contribution there. So it is very easy for an editor, and I can call myself a professional editor because I have been doing this. I have been editing books in academia as well as outside academia for about 40 years. But and along the way, I met many, many authors who had different, takes on their poetry. What did I do initially? And I am to blame. I said, no, this is how you're supposed to, if you want me to edit this, this is supposed. And I learned that fast enough, but with you particularly, June. But yeah, no, I learned that fast back then. I'm not talking about just with your book, Stay Human. I learned that fast. I said, who am I to tell the author whose authentic voice is supposed to be put under a certain umbrella of concepts, forced, like prescribed medication, as if I'm saying, this may not be a great analogy, and I'm talking too much already. I apologize. I will round it up and conclude. Let's say that I assume, June, you have an illness, and I prescribe a medication for you without listening to you first. And in your case, it's your writing that speaks to me. How dare anybody comes out and say, you know what, June, this is how you fix your illness. So, and again, I can go on, and I thoroughly and truly appreciated working with you, you allowing me to work with you, you entrusting me with your craft. And I've learned a lot. So I thank you from the heart.
You're welcome.
And I sign out here. I'm not signing out. I'm listening, but I'm muting myself again. If you want to say something, June, by all means, I can respond.
No. That means a lot. Hearing you say those words and just working with you for the brief time we had, between emails and the correspondence that we had on those emails.
Long drafts, right?
Yeah. I learned a lot though. Just sort of letting it soak in and listening to what you were saying instead of jumping to a conclusion, blah, blah, blah. Everybody that I'm writing for anyway, they don't read, so it doesn't matter. I'm writing, basically, I'm writing for me. And
Exactly.
I'm writing for me, so it
Exactly.
doesn't matter. But the experience made me, it made me wholer. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
You know, if when I look at you, June, I see a lot of myself, in your writing. But you have, in essence, taken it to a different level, or you come from a different perspective. In that I see you as a rebel. Okay, and that's the general term that people like yourself can be categorized. How we're categorized, and primarily because you do not conform to the pre-prescribed, means of communicating, or even topic-wise. And I just happen to know that you are an exceptionally well-read individual, and we could see that shine through in your writing, but it seems that your writing is user friendly, for the more common people. If back to what you said, if they read, that's the thing. Well, that problem is not just for common people, but people across the globe, don't read anymore. We're more visual. I had read a interesting stat that said, if I can recall, that 97% of college graduates never pick up a book again once they graduate college. There's
some interesting videos on YouTube about the intelligence of college going people and college graduates, but that goes without saying. With the reading thing, I've been reading forever. My mother was she was a voracious reader, and for me, my whole life, like, reading was an escape. I could get away from people and go read a book, just get away from them, because I've always been sort of outgoing and gregarious, and you put yourself through your experiences in your environment and what you've been shown and taught. You develop this sort of cast for yourself, this persona. So I would often escape the persona into a book, and then I still do it today, but now it's more I have to escape the book and be more social. So I'm always reading that. Back then it was an escape. Now it is what I do. I read a lot, and I've been blessed enough to have the time and space to do it now in my 50s. So I've robbed enough stage coaches and Pinkerton trains to have a little money, so I don't have to do a whole bunch of work these days.
Good. So let me ask this. Okay. Being an avid reader, for, pretty much your lifetime, you've been ingesting, a lot of perspectives as per, other writers, what compels you to digest it and regurgitate it in June's words? Is there a particular reason that you feel compelled to write? Because there's a lot of people who read and don't write. And I would venture to say that most readers don't write, and most writers don't read.
So a lot of that. I don't know. I think it's the curiosity, the rebel in me, right? I often read books like all the stuff the Panthers wrote, or something that's anti, or an establishment book. I often read it just to attack it. So I'll read it, and then I don't agree with it, so I attack it using the words that I know. Right? That's normally the thing that initially that prompted me to write, and hip hop, like everybody back in the 80s and early 90s, was trying to be a rapper, right? Myself included. So I wrote a lot of raps, and I tried to do that unsuccessfully, but I would often read books any book that I read, I take what's written, and if I don't, it's the almighty question why, right? I've always
Right,
had
right.
this curiosity about knowledge and why people do certain things, why masses of people do certain things. And after the military, like I had this idea that I didn't know either. I thought that like everybody else, the military was a place where, like my father told me, you become a man when you join the military. You're gonna get some discipline, you're gonna get some of this, and you're gonna get some of that. But it's not for the like poor boys and girls are just cannon fodder. And the reason why, you can go back as far as you want in any war, and I don't mean to get off base or anything, but you can go back as far as you want, and there's a certain class of people that fund both sides, and they throw me and you out there, and we die. So that was after the military. After reading the book, I read it while I was in the military. Smedley, uh, General Smedley, The Politics of War, or War is a Racket. After I read that book, I got real angry. So, and I was hearing things. I was hearing things after Desert Storm and during my 10 years in the military that made me contrary to. I was
Mhm.
conflicted. I was conflicted about my service, and I was a squad leader. I was a staff sergeant in the United States Infantry, and I had a lot of responsibility, and I was real proud of that. So there was there's just this conflict, and the reading and the correlation with the writing has always been the question why, like
Right, right.
witnessed in the corruption
Yeah,
of the question why, and why nobody has an answer, and why
right.
every
Yeah,
answer makes sense, but no answer is true.
yeah.
So
You,
I just try to develop my own, right? You
right.
say tomato,
You
I
struck
say tomato.
something close to my heart with that because I too was a military, and I was an A&T officer, and I was in charge of putting together this what they call the Honest John missile. It was a
Okay.
long range missile, and
Yeah.
then delivered to the firing squad. And again, the question arises like, why? Because if you're truthful, the people who are dying for the cause have nothing to do with the cause, you know.
Exactly.
And in essence, uh, we ascribe ourselves to such terms, like blind sheeple to terms like patriotism and democracy, and it
Mhm.
has nothing whatsoever to do with it has to do with blind obedience, to be a slave to the dictations of somebody who's benefiting from this, whatever. I never could figure out why, and I'll put it this way, why poor whites were willing to die for the slave masters in the Civil War. I never could figure out
And
why,
be and be
you know,
proud of it. And
yeah,
after the fact, be
yeah,
proud of it.
why during the Revolutionary War, the common people, were, crying about taxes, whereas they didn't even have food to eat, but they were crying about taxes, and war's a racket. It's a racket as we see
War,
today. It's a racket.
war is a racket. Yes,
You know,
sir. So that is, the immutable why is like speaking about war and the racket and the whole idea of being propagandized into a place where, from my personal experience as a young man, I was given a choice to do 5 years in the bank. I had been on probation and I had gotten some more trouble. So my mother got me a lawyer at the time, and she made a deal with the prosecutor. And I was real cute back then, and I was the people liked me, so they let me join the military, and that was the military probably saved my life. Why I have all the misgivings about it now. If I'd have been home for those 10 years, I have survivor's guilt today, not for buddies that I lost in the military, but buddies that I lost while I was gone at home,
mhm,
gang warfare and the drugs and the rest of it. So
mhm.
it probably saved my life. And that is, to sort of juxtapose the position of I don't hate the military. I don't hate its leaders or its soldiers. I do believe or think somewhere that there's military leaders today in our current climate in the 21st century here right now that have enough consciousness to be thinking about what's going on and possibly considering a different route for our great America.
So, I know we got a little bit to the military, and I'm very, very appreciative of this conversation. But that particular experience, the incarceration, the military, and when we talk about war, there's two fronts. There's the wars that we send our kids over to the front, and then there's the wars that we have every day here on the streets. Where our children are at risk. For all kinds of stuff. And, we even have, because of the fascist type of presence that our government, takes on, we don't know who the enemy is or who's the friend, But my question is this: when we talk about, all this input, if you would, the reading, the experiences of war and the experience of the street, and we talk about the formula that, in the end comes out June Barefield's writing, talk a little bit about how all this input impacted you and why or how it comes out uniquely you in your form of writing.
Bill, I don't know how I got here, man.
Okay.
I really don't. I think about that a lot. Like back years ago, I stopped drinking like 10 years ago. So I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 10 years. And before that, I was a drinker. Like I had my first drink and got drunk probably at 13.
Okay.
I mean, I wasn't drinking every day, but I got drunk my first time at 13. And I don't know how I got here. I often think like it's a blessing, and I'm very happy, very joyful that I'm still here today because, if anybody's familiar with the cartoon Mr. Magoo, the blind guy, back in the day, he's going everywhere and he's got the right attitude, though. I often didn't have the right attitude and I'm still here. So that brings credence to the idea of mine that there is a God, and for whatever reason, whatever gods there are, something better than myself exists. And I have to give it all to him or her or them or whatever that is, because I don't know how I got here. I should is a strong word, but I shouldn't be in my right mind. I shouldn't be free. I shouldn't be probably alive. So, and that's not like me taking it somewhere trying to be dramatic. That's the truth. I've done and been and seen a lot of stuff, and like all my friends are the ones that I grew up with. They're dead, or they're locked up, or they're strung out on drugs. The mother of my children, she just passed away. She was shot in East St. Louis on the 12th of December. So it goes, without saying, it's touched so close to me so many times that, I don't know how I got here. I'm just grateful that I'm here.
Yeah. Well, first, let me offer my condolences, to you and your children. That's something I did not know, and my prayers are with you, for healing and comfort. I know that's a tough one, has to be a tough one. So, so with all this input, you don't know why you got here, and you received the blessings or the gift or whatever we want to, however we want to term it. Do you feel a particular obligation to give back? Is writing your give back, or tell us about other forms of expression? As to how June pays this supposed karmic debt, to creation. Tell us about that.
It's a debt that has to be paid. That's for sure. I've been a part of back years ago, probably right around the time I met you. I was doing prison ministry, like, you know, where you go in and speak to in juvenile facilities. You know, they have preachers that go in there and preach, and then they let current knucklehead sort of try and scare them straight. I did that, and I do all sorts of things at like soup kitchens in Denver, Colorado, and St. Louis. I help to feed. I don't really like to speak about what I do to help other people, but I've been doing it since I got out of jail, really.
Okay.
And here we're in Houston now, so we left St. Louis.
Okay.
We left St. Louis 3 years ago.
Okay.
So we've been out in Houston, and it's you know, I just wanted a change of environment for them two kids to get away from sort of East St. Louis is like I mean, and if you watch television and you look at the advertising and everything that's going on in our so-called reality, everybody's happy, but East St. Louis is like Beirut. You know, I've been to St. Louis. The north side is in shambles. Our cities are crumbling, and people are starving. And on TV, everybody's happy. So
yeah.
So I'm a skeptic by nature, but I don't want to come off as you know, that guy that grouch in the trash can guy on Sesame Street. That ain't me. I'm just trying to be as real as possible with my responses, so that, you know, maybe somebody like me or like you or like us, you know, just to take a ponder and consider the why.
Okay, so let me dig this. I see an opportunity. I would just want to dig into your psyche a little bit. You talked about East St. Louis. You said you're a skeptic, and I'm gonna just throw this term out and let you expound on it. Conspiracy theories.
They turned conspiracy theory into something bad, right? I think the conspiracy is not a theory, and the conspiracy has to do with the people in power. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to do with like the slave. He really doesn't need his master. The master, he needs the slave though. So they've turned the whole thing. If you hear the word conspiracy theory, then you automatically think somebody's a nut. But I mean, you know, personally speaking, I think that I'm old, so I was alive in 2001 when they knocked the buildings down. You can just go back there, or you can look in the news right now in Venezuela, what's going on in the seas off the shores of Venezuela with the boats being bombed. And you can go back to Vietnam, and you can go wherever you want to go. And that conspiracy is it's not a theory, it's a fact, in my opinion. I think that, you know, again, the master is the one who needs the slave. So one day maybe the slave will wake up, and like I always have this thought in my head that one day people will just get up and not go to work and quit and go outside and shake one another's hand and say, hey, how about this? And what about that? And start talking and being neighbors, really neighbors, and think about the reason why the master needs the slave. We don't, I mean, we don't, I've read books that like, I guess you would call them conspiratorial books that have to do with the Masonic lodges and Manny P. Hall. And I've read things that in the past, I've always been told that were taboo, right? You shouldn't read this and you shouldn't read that, and astrology and astronomy are wicked. So I've been delving in a lot of different areas now, and there are books written by these masters where they refer to the masses of the people as the dead.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned
to me that's just crazy. To me that's crazy, but the dead. So I mean, and you know, I'm not a genius. I don't hold any degrees, but I have a spirit. I have intuition, and I you know, you just know. You don't know the entire why, but you know some of the what and when, and where. So that makes it interesting.
Yeah. I think in terms, when I said the word conspiracy, it brought to mind a book I read, back in, I guess it was the 70s. It was written by this guy named Gary Allen. None dare call it conspiracy. And the reason he wrote the book was centered around the Vietnam War. In that we call it loosely the Vietnam War, but it's actually termed the Vietnam conflict because it was never declared a war by Congress.
We used to call them peacekeeping missions.
Yeah, but there's a reason why it was never declared a war, because such families like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Carnegies, and whatever, all these families would have been charged with treason because they were selling the steel to Russia, which made the AK-47s, which killed our children. So they would have been complicit, just like there was a lot of complicity in the Second World War between, Henry Ford and Rockefeller and the DuPont and the Third Reich. So it's interesting how these terms are manipulated. Just like we talk about patriotism and democracy, how these terms are manipulated to mean something other than what they are, to get we, the people that are not thinking, not woke, to follow a particular program, and do the bidding of the people that are in charge. Okay, so here we are, as June, the author. Maybe this is a good time to ask you to read something for us. Is there a particular piece in your book that you would like to get across? And you can read as much as is there a piece in the book that is close to your heart in reference to epitomizing who you are?
I don't often read aloud, but I'll read. It's a piece called "A Time to Kill."
Okay.
Time to Kill. Let me see if I can get it. "A Time to Kill." All right, I gotta put my spectacles on now. "A Time to Kill." There's something about a city. Some about a city just makes you want to kill. Some about those men in masks and blue suits with shiny buttons and combat boots just makes you want to kill. Some about my very existence makes me want to kill. My varied existence. That's the very reason that they kill. Something about a skin too dark, tongue too tangled, features too foreign. Some about public lavatories and toll booths, fire engines, and police sirens always racing down the avenues makes you want to kill. Some about boredom and fear and strife that's pinned on the faces, chained to buses and jobs, wages and laws like slaves in cages makes you want to kill. Some about a pie-faced Negro holding up protest sign scribblings with the women. His scenario made only scenery for his surroundings, barely conscious of his conditions, flabby and weak underneath the flag of imperious elites, shivering like hoes in the streets, hollering out, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." That shit makes me want to kill. Some about the drum that beats inside the vacant loft of too many souls, including my own. Something about the sun that melts anger and harassment into murder. Some about those who integrate to separate that seems desperate and temperate. Some about those who immigrate to be overseen by dark angels spinning like tops controlled by evil princes makes you want to kill. Some about my very existence, insisting that I kill, my very existence, the very reason that they kill. Peace be still now. My meditation whispered to me in a dream I had, but I'm completely awake. Now's not the time. Ever aware that there is a time to kill. That's that thing right there.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you my raw reaction, because I never read that piece, but I get it. It says to me, from my perspective, that there's this underlying anger, that we live with each day, and I think that applies to all people. Maybe not to kill, but all people. There's an underlying frustration and anger that we cannot express, or cannot resolve, you know. That piece to you, what does it mean to you?
That piece was motivated by a book that I've been reading and studying for forever. It's called The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. There's a chapter in there called Violence. And that was motivated from reading that chapter over and over. And it's sort of a book that you don't ever, it's like watching Law and Order. You can watch it over and over and over again. You never get the full gist of what it is. It's a brilliant book, but it's about the oppressed in Algeria, mostly in Africa. And that piece was motivated by that chapter entitled Violence. So to me, it's just what you said. It's the slave class, if you will, and underneath the conscious that has been created for them through all the distractions, through work and through family and through everything that's thrown at school, every institution that they look up to and they're supposed to respect and have fidelity and honor and feel like this is for me, for all the people like me on Main Street who have this underpinning. If it's not there, then they must be dead. But that's what it's about. It's about the reality of life, like for a certain class of people, I suppose. I mean, if you're able to, for myself, I've often like not been able to articulate what I feel verbally until like you can find me in my writing because I can go somewhere and by myself and be quiet and I can find it. But oftentimes when I talk with people, I revert back to that persona, and that persona is it's not me. It's counter to what I believe and who I am. So it took me 50 years to figure myself out, and I still haven't done it. So for all the people like me who have this soul, and they know there is a time to kill. I mean, John Trudell, I was listening to him, some of his lectures, and he recently passed, I believe, but he was talking about the same thing. We can't. I mean, you can't fight. You can't fight and win against the government. Not here in the West. You can't do it. Back, when Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and the like, they took on the powers that be. That was a different time. But there is a time, like, although we can't fight and win an all-out war against the so-called masters, the powers that be, there are times when, you have to put the picket sign down, bro, and you gotta, I mean, there's reality, and then there's this other thing called Black Lives Matter. That bullshit, come on now. I mean, so that's what that's about.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me.
No, go ahead.
When you said sometimes to put the picket signs down, that kind of brought to mind the dichotomy between like a Martin Luther King and a Malcolm X, or I mean, like, two sides of the coin of the same reality, that there's something broken that needs to be fixed, so what is the path to resolution? Is it a combination of the two or whatever the case? And we still
I think it's got to be. I think it's got to be a combination of the two. And as a younger man, I was of the belief that Martin Luther King was when I came up as a teenager and a young man in my 20s, I had the belief that Martin Luther King was not. I thought he was somebody that they placed out there on a pedestal and they controlled. But that's not true. So I think it's got to be a combination. It's got to be. I mean, even when they were marching on Selma and doing all of those things, they had a group. They said that the National Guard protected them, but there was a group of brothers and sisters in North Carolina, the man's last name is Rudolph, but they had protected that entity of the so-called civil rights uprising and Martin Luther King during those times. And they fought the police, and these are things you never see on video or TV, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, like, my children, they're both teenagers now, and they, like my mother, I push them to read. I make them read. So they read things, and mostly what they read are the things that I read when I was teenagers, is what I suggest to them. But they read what they want. But there there has to be consciousness that's not taught verbally but shown to children.
Yeah.
You have to as a parent, conscious soul in the world, they have to be able to see you articulate yourself peacefully, but have a sense of self and a sense of honor about what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
Black, white, red, yellow, brown. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Having at my age, I and Valentine probably can also attest to this, having lived through quote unquote the hippie movement, the Black Power movement, the civil rights movement, and fast forward 50, 60 years, I hate to ask myself this question, but truth be truth, what really has changed?
I don't see it. I don't know.
Yeah, what really has changed? The struggle is the same. Maybe our approach to it is differently, but has there been any particular notable liberation, from the oppressive boots of those that are in charge, those that make the rules?
I don't see any.
Yeah.
I don't see any. And like, I was the type of child that when my father had his people around and they were playing pinochle, or they were shooting dice, or they were playing cards, and they were talking, and they were doing their thing. I was the kid that was in the corner somewhere trying to figure out what they meant and what they were talking about. And they all came up during these times. Like, my father, he was a Vietnam veteran. He lost a brother in Vietnam. And I don't see, like, I think that the chains are different. Like, but the birdcage metaphor, like, there's so many different ways to enslave people. And as long as people are busy working and fighting and fucking and farting and doing what they do, they don't have time. They don't have time to engage in anything that is useful to themselves.
Yeah. Valentine, you wanted to say something? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Okay.
No, I'm not. I just wanted to speak very briefly to what you had just said, Bill. I think I was first politicized, and Bill knows this, June, when I was a small child and I was in Canada. And this was during World War II. I am that old. On the coffee table in my grandma's house, there was an open book. It could have been one of those Lifetime books, or Time Life books. Anyway, there was a photo in there that I could see as I walked by, and it was a pile of bodies. And I didn't know what it was immediately, but then I went back, I looked again, and I got it because I started reading at the age of 3. And I learned a lot of things, even how to, read the newspaper. And I realized it was a concentration camp. It is what had been shown after they opened places like Dachau and, Auschwitz and all of that. And I think that was the thing that kind of put me on this path. And I do remember also when I was 17, and this was during the marches, on Selma, and I heard about the Freedom Riders, and I was at a party and this was in Texas, at my other grandfather's house, and I said something like, I thought it was marvelous, and I thought it was so brave, and I really loved the idea and wished I could be there and do it. And so I said that out loud in his hearing, and he pointed to the gate and he said, "Go home get your head straight and don't come back until you have. And I went out and I got in the little Jeep that I had and I drove home and I thought, well, I guess I don't belong in that family either. But yeah, I think this has been going on forever.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take a combination, as you said, both of you, of Martin Luther King's ideas and also Malcolm X's ideas. And to your point, June, I think that anger that you are talking about, and I understand it because I carry it also, that anger can be red energy to help us do what we can do. And you, for example, are writing. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I realize that, a lot of our conversation was based on activism and revolution and, the need for change. And, we did touch on, writing and poetry to a small degree. We had you read a poem. Okay. So just so that we can keep some connection to the purpose of this interview, I'm going to ask you to read another poem.
Okay, sure. Is there anything that you want to hear? Or just anything?
I got to say this for those that haven't heard it. My favorite, it's not in this book, but my favorite poem of yours is, right?
The biography.
Yeah, there you go.
The biography.
Biography.
I don't have that with me.
Yeah, but that's and those that haven't read it, maybe I'll send it out to you, a copy of it. But what a masterful disclosure of self this particular poem is.
I didn't embellish too much in that either. That's pretty
Pardon
much.
me?
That's pretty much what I said. I didn't embellish too much when I put that together. That took like 3 or 4 years to get. Like back when I used to write in notebooks, you'd have some thoughts and you write them down, and then you go back to this thought and you put that one with that thought and you link that one to this one, and then suddenly I said, "Oh, that's a biography." I think it was at a time when people
from the reader perspective, it's okay, just the way it is. It doesn't need any more or any less. Now, you as the creator, of course, you come back, edit, say, maybe I should have said this, or maybe I should have said that. I mean, that's something that all of us as writers suffer through, like whether they leave it alone or whether they're quote unquote enhance it because we're so intelligent,
Right. Right. Yeah. That part. Anyway, this one is called Photograph. Photograph. I pray for the world, but the world ain't mine. I wish I could change the world, but I can only rarely change my own mind, wavering as it does from who I am to what I was, favoring the latter in matters of this world just because of the conditioning, the sort of planned obsolescence, this obsession with obsessing, total acquiescence to every mandate given by the state. And so what I do is pray. I do. Then I meditate thinking on these things, whatever is true and pure and kind and lovely, humbly. I just pray. I take a good look inside. But the world, it ain't mine. I was given this, so I'm living in this trap. I wish I could save the world, but I can't save my damn self. In fact, all the pieces of me at peace with me are jagged and frayed at the edges, like puzzle pieces that don't fit. Sharply formulated, a mechanism used for survival through all the phases of my life, stages where I ignored all the writing on the wall. But the one thing that I always knew intuitively, I knew that this thing we call living is a con. It's a witch's brew boiled and stirred from birth, the soul of man being systematically unearthed, wrapped up in the rhetorical, historical fantasy, giving credence to a curse, the world, giving it graciously to the goaded, the desperate classes, the masses of the people not unlike myself, unlearned even with the trappings provided by your ivory tower academia, controlled, lingering underneath the canopy created for the proverbial ends to justify the all-compliant means. The world, in my eyes, is just about all greed at every level. I contemplate imagining the ignorance and the bliss of yesterday with bated breath, obsessed with the knowledge that something has been set in place. So what I do is pray for the world, drifting inside the doldrums every day, day by day. And these days, nothing proposed will last for more than a day any motherfucking way. So fuck what them say. I spend my time watching what they do. Words these days have no meaning. The project is for a new American century, Aquarius the age. All memory must fade into this artificial reality where sufferers are smitten, written cleverly out of the life equation, tethered to the machine believing false information, under the charming spell of snakes, all bound to the corporation. So I just pray for the world, but the world is not mine. I was given this just like you. I'm living in this just like you, in this trap, an open air prison. But he is risen, says the overly civilized Christian, overly committed, inwardly smitten. It's all been written, seems nobody's reading. Britain's the beast, America the wicked. The invention of the so-called Jew, conversely, has been hidden. And to think your own thoughts in the so-called democracy has been forbidden. So I pray for the world. That man, he never came here to bring peace, but a sword. So here it is. And in between dreams, I can see spots of time where a gigantic snake is shedding its skin. Billions comply. Bow down and praise the lie. Every principality and power lined up with the mental, spiritual wickedness in high places. Nothing anywhere is accidental, and no thing is sacred. Millions die, and now deprivation is life. But not just in the third world. Now, use a nigga too. So now the shoe is on the other foot, and that foot, it seems to be up your ass. So do as I do. Pray for the world. Give God the will, nigga. Take a photograph. Ding, ding.
Okay. I see Valentine smile. You know, when we got prepared, when we were preparing for this interview, I quickly realized that Valentine brought to my attention that she did not have any reference to who you are. So I sent her first a book cover. Then I sent her your manuscript in PDF. So I have a request for you. If you would, could you sign a book and mail it out to Valentine for us? You know,
Be happy to.
okay. And I'll
My
send
pleasure.
you. Good, Valentine, you're mute again. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, June. That would be an honor.
No, it'll
It's
be my
really,
pleasure.
I just want to say, if I may, your poetry is about the most powerful poetry I have ever heard, with the possible exception of Bill's, who is equally powerful, but not quite as fierce.
Yeah, I'm a lamb. You know,
You're a lamb. I'm only a bitch on what is it, Substack these days, but I have my memories too.
Yeah. So I guess we're drawing close to the end. Yeah. And June, we got to do this again.
Absolutely.
You know? But first, Valentine, I can't express to you how thankful I am for you providing this platform, where I can get my buddy, in to share with us, and I don't think we've really touched the tip of the iceberg, him being, a profound thinker, well-read activist, and also having the courage to speak the way it is, I was listening to him recite, and, like certain words, I did like a minor cringe, but it went along. It went along.
I started to skip that part about the Hebrew, but
it went along with the landscape of what was being said, and it did not, if you would, distort or minimize the message. As a matter of fact, it enhanced it. So, but I want to commend you, June, for the courage you have, to speak, and if we could figure out some way to get more readership and acceptance and embracing and integration with the message, that you're, sharing and regurgitating from, the input you had, that would be a great thing. And perhaps this is one of the platforms that gets it done. Just to let you know that this is going to be a video on YouTube as well. Valentine, you want to say something?
Yeah, I do. This platform and the other platform that we're working on, that our nonprofit's been working on for about 10 years now, is a journal. It's called Four Winds Journal. And we try to put it out quarterly. I'm getting ready to do the spring issue. And the theme is resistance/resilience. And if you have anything you would like to share for the journal, then please send it. I'll see that Bill sends you the email address. So
Yes,
you can do
send me a
that.
link, and
Mhm.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So what I'll do, I'll go to the email and I'll, put both of you on as references as an introduction. So that way you'll have the emails in your, in your catalogs, or in your directories.
Good. And also when we share an author's work in the journal, then we also, put in a link to that author's website or page or where the book can be found or whatever, so.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. We'll definitely talk about it then.
Good.
I'd be honored to do something like that. Thank you.
Well, thank
Yep.
you. And that would be real helpful because
Yeah.
the more we can get people away from their darn cell phones like this thing here, like
Wow.
Yeah.
in front of your face all the time, and back to turning pages, the happier I'm gonna be.
Yeah. And I must say, I got to say this. Okay. I've been a participant in the journal in a few times. And even though there are some quote unquote revolutionary voices like myself and maybe Robert or, a couple other people,
Yeah, Raphael.
Raphael,
Me.
June, you stand on a platform all by yourself because you're so much more raw and you have the courage to be raw. Whereas, a lot of times we're trying to lily paint, be cute with our language and what have you. And I do that. I'm guilty of that at times, but I really do appreciate the stance that you take with your poetry, and saying it just as it is, just, sometimes no filter, and that takes a lot of courage. And, hopefully you can be blessed with more readership, which means more book sales for us, but, by the same token.
Sure.
Yay.
Sure.
Yeah.
I used to initially like have anxiety about that, but I don't care. If you read it, you read it. I drop it off like at shelters, and I drop it off at I had an interaction with the sheriff at the jailhouse about trying to drop it off at the jailhouse, but he finally took it. I don't know if the inmates got it, but I drop it off at like Goodwills and whatever, right? So, and the part about the I don't know, telling it like it is. I think in a lot of cases, ignorance is just bliss, right? So, I don't know a lot of things, so I don't really concern myself with them. I just speak what I feel and
Right.
hope thank the goodness that exists that I'm able to do it today.
Yeah.
Because it's gone from this place to this place, and in my eyes, it's becoming something else. So thank you first and foremost, Bill, for having me and always being, like a light in the storm. I'll be gone 3 or 4 years, and then I'll come back, and you're always the same, Bill. So God bless you. And
thank you so much.
I love you.
Thank
Love
you.
you too, Matt. Okay.
Yeah. Thank all you guys.
Again,
Yes, sir.
thank you, Valentine. Thank you, June. Thank you, Julia, for being with us. And thank you to the universe, for providing us this opportunity to commune together.
For sure.
Okay.
Give me those links. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to email you shortly. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.